Bismillah, y'all already know what it is. Third Party Podcast, Culture, Faith, Excellence, Season 2, Episode 2.
It's Salima Suswell, and I'm so excited to join the Third Party Podcast.
Y'all already know what it is. Muslim Casing, a.k.a. the Muslim Boxer, a.k.a. now 12-0. We said inshallah last time. We're now 12-0. But a.k.a. Mr. Nyquil, a.k.a. Mr. Overhand Right Correct, and a.k.a. Mr. I Walked Out With Freeway last week. That joke was dope.
Yo, Rod DeVoe, Third Party Podcast, Culture, Faith, Excellence. Excited to have Salima Suswell today. First, I want to say welcome to the show.
Welcome. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Let's see. She's a mother, a wife, entrepreneur, political strategist, decision maker. She's an all-around mover and shaker. In 2023, she founded the Black Muslim Leadership Council. Also in 2023, she was appointed to the Pennsylvania Governor's Advisory Commission on Women. She's the founder and CEO of Evolve Solutions. She founded the Philadelphia Ramadan and Eid Fund. She's the chair of the Muslim American Host Committee for the Democratic National Convention. She's vice president and key organizer for the Women's March on Philadelphia. She's on the Leadership Council for the United Negro College Fund. She's the first Muslim woman appointed to the Pennsylvania Governor's Advisory Commission. In 2020, she was appointed by Mayor Jim Kenney to the Mayor's Commission for Faith-Based and Interfaith Affairs. This list is too long.
So basically, she's Viola Davis of the Suicide Squad.
She Viola Davis and what's
Viola
the
Davis played her.
No, but what's the
I know who you're talking about.
Kerry Washington character?
Kerry Washington.
What's
That's
that?
exactly who you're talking about.
So,
Olivia Pope.
Olivia,
She's Olivia Pope. There you go.
Right. What's the Muslim name for Olivia? What's the?
Huh?
I don't know. What's the Muslim name for Olivia?
I don't know.
All right. Welcome to the show, Salima. We're so glad to have you. You just got an amazing story. Mm-hmm. I've known you in the community for years. Always admired the tenacity, the hard work, just how you willing to sacrifice. I'm happy to see you in the positions that you are in now. I was thinking of like, man, who can we have on the show that is a force? And I was like, let me call her. I was like, she might say no.
I'm a fan of both of yours.
Thanks. So, all right. So we're going to start with the Black Muslim Leadership Council.
The Black Muslim Leadership Council, it was something that was born out of an idea that we needed a dedicated platform for Black Muslims to uplift and advance equity and justice on behalf of our communities. And so I recognized, being in the national political organizing space, that many of the issues that were a priority to the American Muslim community as a whole really didn't include the issues that impact American Muslims in urban communities.
You mean black Muslims?
Yeah, I was going to clarify that. That is very important to note. But also, we live in communities with Latinos and Caribbeans and Africans who are all living under the same socioeconomic conditions and facing the same issues, whether it's in healthcare and education, with the school to prison pipeline and just public safety and gun violence. All of these things are issues, domestic policy issues that are impacting American Muslims in urban community and primarily Black Muslims. And so I wanted to highlight those things and advocate for the unique needs of our community.
Like, how did you get into this space? Because I think at one time you were executive director of another political action committee, Engage, right? So how did you get into this space?
Actually, I still work as a consultant to Engage, but it started way before my time with Engage. I just realized this year that the first election that I worked on was in 2004. It was the Bush-Kerry Edwards election. And so that was 20 years ago.
Wow.
I know, I'm old. But I was a paralegal then, and people in politics always relied on attorneys and legal professionals to support like election day protection and to make sure that everything, that there was no voter intimidation on election day and to do poll watching and things like that. So that's actually how I started. 2004, just supporting elections, volunteering. And then I had some friends who are Muslim who are now elected officials, but were not at the time, who were interested in running for political office, such as Senator Sharif Street and like Omar Sabir. And so we all started out together like years ago, just, in politics. Sharif, his father, was the second Black mayor in Philadelphia. So he was born into politics. The very first campaign that I ever worked on was when Senator Street was running for city council years and years ago. And he ran a few times before he was actually elected. And we organized this movement in this group called Sisters for Sharif Street. I co-led that group, and we actually became really like the leading force in fundraising and GOTV for the campaign. And from there, everyone would ask me, other Muslims who were interested in running for office would ask me to support their campaigns. And then, the rest is history. After I stopped working as a paralegal, I started my own government affairs and community engagement firm. And so I started doing a lot of those things that I used to do on a volunteer basis professionally.
How was that as a Black Muslim woman? A visually Black Muslim woman, how was that space? How did you navigate through that space?
It wasn't too difficult in a city like Philadelphia. And again, when I first started working in politics, it was local. It was in, Philadelphia and across PA. Muslims being such a huge part of Philadelphia life, it wasn't really a big thing. However, there were times like in the Muslim community, I would say that some of the leaders didn't necessarily respect the political people, the Muslims in politics. It was kind of like, well, we're the leaders and the people in politics, don't necessarily lead this community. However, a lot of community members, a lot of masjids and organizations, they relied on, the people who were politically active to get things done. It's difficult for women in general when you're in a space like politics that is dominated by men. At a certain point, I started utilizing sort of the relationships and the expertise that I had in politics to uplift and advance the Muslim community. For example, getting Eid holidays recognized on the Philadelphia public school calendar.
Thank you.
Alhamdulillah.
No,
that was something.
Thank you. We really
that was something
that.
I worked on with people like Sharif Street and Councilman Curtis Jones and Ryan Boyer, who are all big in politics, and were able to lean on the then Mayor Jim Kinney, and the superintendent of schools was then Dr. Height, and say, listen, we have a large, group of Muslims in the city of Philadelphia. In fairness, we should recognize their holiday. So things like that, I started doing more like that. So in doing those things, have I ever felt misogyny and felt like, people would rather me write the notes than be leading the conversations? Sure. But, I had to earn the respect that I have now.
So one of the things that I do notice, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, is like a shift in mindset around Muslims and politics. Like, what's led to that shift happening?
I think because back when I was young, people were like, politics are haram, I'm not going to vote. And people just didn't understand, I think, enough about politics and the whole civic engagement process to participate. I think that the more Muslims got involved and started running for elected office, just leadership has been exposed to, the power of being civically engaged and what politics can do for a community. I think that everyone just began to see, and definitely in leadership, like my Abu, Rahimullah, for example, he didn't want anything to do with politics at a certain point, but before he passed, like in the years before he passed, he was voting. He would be so excited. Salima, I voted. He was voting, and that's because you get to a point where you see that if you're not voting, there is going to be no change in your community.
Why should Muslims care about voting? I will. Before you even say anything, I will say, I'm a person that doesn't vote. I'm a person that it's kind of a trust thing. It's like, is it the fox or the snake? And it's like, all right, well, let me just stand back, because no matter who I vote for, it's always something. We had our disagreements and so many controversial things with Trump, and then we get Biden in, and now you got all this stuff happening around the world, and we are a major part of it. And so you still have people stepping back. Why is it still important for us to step in and be a part of that vote?
Because it's your power. you know, when you don't vote, you don't count. It's just as simple as that. If you are not a person who votes, and they can see who votes and who does not vote, they may not be able to tell like who you voted for, but they can pull up your name and tell if you voted in an election or not. And so
Only voted one time.
And so as community, they can also tell, okay, well, how many Black people are voting? You know, how many Black people in Philadelphia are voting? How many people who identify as Muslim? You know, and that's another thing that we have to talk about too, because as a community, our numbers are vastly undercounted because many of us don't have, even myself, don't have Muslim last names, and that's how they count us. To answering your question, elected officials are held accountable by the communities that put them in office, period. If you are not helping them to get elected, they don't care. And I know that that doesn't sound good, but that is what it is. If Black Muslims establish their own voting bloc, then you would see them establishing laws. How do you think other people get laws? You see other groups, they get laws, they get all kind of accommodations,
They get
all
the
types
vote
of
and they
things
get the-
happen.
get
Why
the
do you think
complaints.
that? Why do you think that is?
I agree.
It's two things that builds political power: writing checks and getting votes. And most often, they know where to get the money from. They know who the people are that have money, so they can get the money.
Right.
Votes are even more powerful than the checks. And so again, if your people are voting, regardless of which way they're voting, I know a lot of people are upset with Biden right now, so they didn't want to vote for Biden. But even in the primary election, there was a campaign called the Uncommitted campaign, where folks exercised their right to vote to show, hey, I'm letting you know that I will vote, but I'm not voting for you. I'm going to write in uncommitted so that you know I'm protesting you, but that I did vote.
Right.
Because if there's a certain, in Michigan, over 100,000 people did that. They paid attention to that because 100,000 people can swing an election. Philly helped elect Biden. It's an undisputed fact. Pennsylvania is one of the most important swing states in presidential elections. The votes that were counted in Philadelphia are what matter as it relates to Biden winning the election. And we know that Philadelphia is largely Black and that there is a large Muslim community in Philadelphia.
How do we push better political education?
Well, organizations like Engage, even CARE, and BMLC, the Black Muslim Leadership Council, we're doing the work. Civic engagement is one of our top areas. And we have 4 major focus areas. It's policy advocacy, changing laws that support our unique needs, and civic education, and also nonpartisan voter turnout. That just means you're telling people they should vote, but not telling them who to vote for. And then leadership development, because we need to be, grooming future leaders. And also people who are senior professionals even need skills in leadership. And so those are the areas that we're working on. BMLC, we're going to be doing workshops at the Masajid across the city. We're a national organization, so we're focusing this year in Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Florida. And we're going to have people there on the ground that are actually doing workshops and tabling at masjids, and closer to election day doing GOTV, which means get out the vote, which is, just canvassing, knocking on doors, sending text messages, making phone calls, and encouraging people to get out the vote.
People don't always see how politics connect to their everyday life. And I think the more you could paint that picture, hopefully the more people will see how it impacts, what kind of stores go up in their neighborhood, what kind of playgrounds they get, how their schools improve.
How their schools improve, their healthcare choices, as we know, the pothole that you hit where you're driving down the street, the way your tax dollars are spent. Just about everything. There are legislators, like those state representatives at the state level, are making all kinds of decisions, not only about the laws, but about the funds. The state has billions of dollars in funds that they allocate to different programs. So about how that budget, those allocations work. And in the city, you have people who are focusing things on the city, at the city level. You have district council, representatives or district council people who represent the area that you live in, and then you have city at large folks who represent the entire city. They are making decisions that really, really, really impact your life, especially if you're like a business owner, have children, have elders in your family that need elder care, senior care. It's just a lot. They're controlling a lot. So it's really important for us as Muslims to play a part in civic engagement, to be voting, so that we can have the unique needs of our communities met.
So I've actually worked on some campaigns,
Mm-hmm.
and it's 100% true. They know who vote and who don't vote. They classify you as like super voters. They know if it's a presidential election, if you're voting, and that's how they target though. So that's how they target who they get attention to. That's how they target who they make promises to.
That's right.
I've actually worked on that specific part in elections, figuring out vote numbers, contact numbers, and stuff like that. So it's 100% true that if you don't vote, they're
not
know.
gonna pay attention to you.
No. I mean, and then for a lot of politicians, they look at it like it's easier to get someone who already votes than it is to motivate somebody who doesn't vote. So those things are important to understand. I don't think, most people understand those things. And when people collectively come together, they exercise a certain level of power.
So how do we get away from the stigma of, politics is haram?
Yeah, I think that when people are saying that it's haram, I don't think it's really the act of voting. I just think that there are a lot of things that are associated with politics that are really corrupt and really evil. And I'm not going to say that that's not true.
So is America.
So is America.
You're living in it.
Exactly.
So what can you say about that? You're living in it.
Yeah. Brother Abdullah and Sister Aaliyah Walker, they did a lot of education around that, what you're speaking of. And they had dalil on why, Islamically we can participate in elections. And I wish I had that information. I don't think that it is the act of, I know one thing that is stated, that you follow the law of the land.
Side note, for anybody who doesn't know what dalil is, it means proof.
Yeah, proof, evidence, Islamic evidence. It's stated in Quran, I believe it's Surah An-Nisa, that talks about seeking justice.
Yes.
And that's a part of it. You can't establish change and seek justice for the community that you serve, or your family, or the community that you care about the most, without participating in elections and voting.
So do you feel like it's a way you have to reconcile like faith with politics?
I think that's a good question. I will say this. I think that you have to reconcile morally, I would say. Your moral values should be connected to your faith. You should vote. You're going to vote. Like, I'm going to call you on election day. You're going to vote. You're going to vote. Like, we're going to vote.
Like,
you have to.
I am.
She going to be like, let me see your sticker.
Sure, exactly. Look,
show me your sticker.
I'm going to take it from you. I'm going to take it from his car.
You have to vote. Because you know what happens when Brother Muxin votes? They see when more and more Muxins, more and more people, low propensity voters is what they call you, low propensity voters, people who don't vote. When more and more of the Muxins vote, they say, okay, let's start paying attention to that community. So when somebody needs you, that means that's a certain power that you hold.
Right.
And when you don't vote, you give up your power.
So this year is a very important time to actually, promote the voting, especially in the Muslim community, especially in the Black community, low-income communities where we don't feel like we're getting anything.
Yeah, we have to show up.
All right,
vote,
you said what?
I said,
listen, I've been involved in some political stuff for a long time.
I'm gonna just wait till he go in. Whatever he's doing, I'm gonna just go ahead. Like, tell me what to do. My dad was an imam. Growing up, especially, so the meetings. Yeah, your dad was an imam as well.
Yeah,
growing up in the meetings, seeing your dad frustrated when you come home.
Anytime when the closer you get to power, the more you're going to get all the viciousness. It's up to us to be an example, honestly. As Muslims, it's up to us to be an example. It doesn't have to be that way. And you said, I think before, or maybe even you said it, that's the way of the world. Like that's the world has just become a really, really, really tough place to be in.
Very tough.
You recently were able to get an audience with President Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Now, whether you like the president or respect the president or any of that, it's a big deal. It's a big deal.
We cool.
So before we talk about the details, like, how does that feel? Like, how do you feel? Like, was you like geeked about it, or like?
I mean, I'm gonna be honest. To be a person who chose politics as a career, and to have an opportunity to meet with the president and negotiate foreign policy and domestic policy, that's like, it's a big deal. You know, just with everything that's going on, I didn't go into it honestly feeling like, oh my God, I'm so excited to talk to the president. And it was only like 6, Muslims in the American Muslim community that were invited to this conversation. I was the only Black woman. There was another Black man, Imam Talib Sharif from the Nation's Mosque in DC. And so I will say this. I went there with a mission for him to. I talked, earlier about the fact that, I'm just going to say it, Black Muslims are being erased. It's like we don't exist. It's like we don't exist. We're not a part of the conversations. We're put into like the bucket of, oh, those are Black issues, but it's like not like we're Muslim. When we're having these conversations, it's not like Black people are actually Muslim. You know what I mean? And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. And so for me, a lot of people felt like we should have boycotted the president and that we should not have gone to engage with him or to speak with him. People felt like because of, the president's support of Israel, that we should boycott him, that we shouldn't sit with him. Now, a few things you should know. They canceled the iftar dinner that they normally do. Sometimes they do an iftar dinner or either do an Eid dinner. They didn't want to have a big thing. They were just going to invite a few people really for a meeting, and that would be followed by iftar dinner just for, a handful of folks. We declined the offer to have dinner because we said we're not about to be breaking bread with the president who is supporting a war and there are people starving.
When you say we, who is we?
The invitees of the.
So collectively, a group of Muslims.
Collectively, we decided that we would not have iftar dinner just in honor of the people in Gaza who are starving, and we just we didn't want to have that kind of social encounter with them.
Was there a lot of backlash from that?
No, we told him we will have a policy meeting with you, but we won't, have dinner with you. And they respected that. They changed the whole thing. Honestly, they had to have done a lot to change everyone's schedule because there were like 8 people. It wasn't just the president. It was the vice president. It was the national security advisor. It was the ambassador to the United Nations. It was like a whole group of senior cabinet members and senior administration officials. So they changed it to be before iftar. It was just a policy meeting. It was a 90-minute meeting. My main purpose in accepting the invitation is, one, I've been, you might have seen the articles that came out when BMLC launched. BMLC launched in March, and some of the headlines were this Black group has been formed, and they're saying that they actually want to speak to Biden and that they haven't abandoned him, but they're putting pressure on him for a ceasefire. That was controversial already because people in the community didn't like the fact that we were saying that we would engage with him and that we had not abandoned him.
So when you say people in the community, like, how does that feedback come to you?
On social media. Okay. Yeah. This national story was done by, I don't know if you know Yamiche Alcindor, and for NBC, and it was a big story. I mean, everyone was talking about it. It was in all the WhatsApp groups.
I saw the news. National Black Muslim-led organization.
It was a big deal when it came out. Folks paid attention, and then the very next week we launched on March 8th. We had a big press conference at City Hall. Some of our national board members and staff were there. There were many articles that came out. So we launched in a big way. A lot of people were paying attention to the fact that there was this group that called themselves Black Muslims, and they were working in politics, and that we established a C4, which is, so we have 2 entities. It's a C3, a 501c3 nonprofit, but it's also a C4, which is a nonprofit that allows you to engage in political activity. And you can endorse candidates and you know, participate in elections. So folks, I think, were really paying attention to that because they were like, wow, Black Muslims are being active. They're going to have a voice in this election.
I mean, I think even the name
Yeah.
Black
Yeah.
It
Muslim
was dope to see.
Leadership
Oh,
Council.
Black
Yeah, and
Muslim
thank
Leadership
you
Council.
because you were one of our brand ambassadors and helped us get the word out
I'm
for
here
our
for
launch.
You doing stuff behind my back, bro?
Absolutely. I'm here
You
for
doing-
the minute they said she called me. Because the crazy thing is, funny story, she was like, they was like, yeah, Salima Suswell was I was like, nah, I'm cool. Because I thought it was not led by Black people at first. We're gonna talk, and I thought that it was
You thought it was something I was doing for another organization.
I thought it was another organization, and I
Yeah.
was like, I asked him, I asked somebody else, and then of course, you know, shout out to Mose the comic. You know, he is the liaison for the
Yeah.
Black community because he said, Salima, my peoples. He said, and I'm asking you to do this because that's what I said. If that's your people, that's my people.
But that's so important that you're saying that because you're speaking to another reason why I started the Black Muslim Leadership Council, because I've always had my consulting firm. So I have took clients that were these larger American Muslim organizations that didn't really have Black Muslims working for them or have Black Muslim relationships. So they brought me on to help them engage Black Muslim communities. But what I learned is through my work was that my people weren't really feeling being a part of working with these other organizations. And for me, it was, you know, already, you know, established platform in some instances. And they were giving me the resources to help organize and do things. But I said, you know what, I just have to create my own lane. You know, I have to create my own lane. And there are not enough Black-led, you know, Black Muslim-led institutions that we can call our own where we're advocating for our own needs. And this is not an easy thing, by the way. I have limited resources, limited time, and, you know, all the things, but I think it's so important. And I always say that this work that we're doing is going to leave an imprint that just is, you know, lasting beyond our days on this earth, inshallah. And it's a commitment, and it's about legacy, and that's, you know, that's why I'm doing it. So I want to get back to the White House meeting.
Yeah.
Before I made the decision to go, I got Shura. So
you go what?
Sure. So meaning
Consultation.
Consultation
from her group.
consultation.
So Shura is like consulting people that are close to you, that you trust.
Right.
I never
and
seen
coming
somebody use that word.
to an agreement on things.
Shura.
You know, like the Majlis Ashura, for example.
Gotcha.
It's like a body, a consultative body of
gotcha.
individuals who kind of make decisions together. So first, I called a couple of the big imams that I've worked with that have supported me and who I respect.
Is it like Philly or a bigger?
No, because it's a national organization.
Call big dog. Stop playing with her.
So no,
Put
I
some
call,
respect on her name.
We'll cut it out. Philly
She
got
got
big
a
dogs.
sleeveless blazer. Stop playing with her.
Philly got big
She
dogs.
came in there Superwoman.
Listen,
The Black Superwoman.
She's trying to get through the story.
Put some respect on her name. Talk about.
Go ahead.
So Imam Siraj,
Alhamdulillah.
Imam Zayd Shaker.
Amen.
These are people who I spoke with. Imam Nadim from Atlanta, Georgia, who is, you know, a part of BMLC. I spoke with our board. I spoke with, you know, a group of the leaders that have been advisors to BMLC. Consistently, the consensus was you should absolutely go. You should absolutely go. Imam Zayd Shaker, he was really supportive, and he even wrote after the meeting. He wrote a really nice statement of support,
Right.
explaining, you know, that really Islamically, this is what we do. We engage. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He spoke to his enemies. He spoke with the people that weren't necessarily the best people. But this is what the history is, and this is what should be done. It was 6 of us. We all got like 6 or 7 minutes to deliver the remarks that made sense to us. And I'm gonna tell y'all something. I went in there and I was like, listen, I'm going in and I'm going to talk about this crisis, but there's no way I'm not talking about, you know, I was
kicked in the door, waved in the full
with the smoke.
She put her
and
suitcase
you know what the
down
crazy
there.
thing is? You know what the craziest thing is? They sat me right next to Biden.
Yeah.
They
Okay.
sat me
Nice.
right next to Biden. And I was like, how did I and sat right next to him. And the guy was like, he said, well, we put a lot of thought into, how we arrange seating. There were doctors there that spent time in Gaza that wanted to share, photos and stories about the children and the injured folks over there. I spoke to him about the African American Muslim perspective and that this situation impacts us. It resonates with us because our people suffered from 400 years of genocide. Our people have suffered apartheid. Our people have experienced dehumanization. We understand it and we're impacted by it. And so we stand in solidarity with the Palestinian people. And
stories are parallel.
Our stories are parallel and there's intersection between, our liberation. I wanted him to understand that it's not just Arabs and South Asians who you're in danger of losing votes from.
Right.
Black people are unhappy with you as well. And so I spoke to him about that and, about our history, because even some of the most admired freedom fighters like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King and Shirley Chisholm, even, they all spoke up for Palestinian liberation. So I also took the opportunity to say that Black Muslims are Black people and we're suffering. I talked about, Philadelphia, where I'm from. And the gun violence and that Muslim youth are part of it. This was 1 week before the mass shooting on Eid. I was telling the president about the gun violence in Philly. I spoke to him about that and told him that, our people are starving, our people are unhoused. We have disparities in education, healthcare. I told him all of those things as well. And alhamdulillah, I honestly thought that it was a good conversation. Right. There were some things that he said in the meeting that I'm not going to say.
Okay.
But
you saying you're not going to say because you feel like it's detrimental, or
no, not
or
that it's detrimental. That I just there were certain things that were said in the meeting that I think should stay in the meeting. Okay. Wait, I'm going to tell you about the aftermath of the meeting. But after the meeting, somebody leaked. First of all, let me just say this.
Really?
Somebody leaked the invitees. Now, the story had come out that he was going to do this meeting because when the president does things, everyone knows. Right. But somebody leaked the names. It has to be somebody from the White House. Right. So
why you think? They
because reporters started calling me as I was on my way to the meeting, saying we were told that you accepted the invitation
before
when I was in the car on my way to the White House. I got calls from reporters, and I'm not talking about. I mean, New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, all of the Al Jazeera. These are the people that are emailing me and calling me before the meeting happened. I only mention that because there were certain things that I didn't want to talk about everything in the meeting because you don't want to not be invited back to the White House.
Run her mouth.
And then I know she go to everything.
Listen, she be rapping.
It was this one thing I said that he said that his wife had told him make it stop. And oh my God, why did I say that? I think I said that to the New York Times. And then every station,
I see what you're saying.
Every person called me and said, "What did he say? And how did he say it?" And I was like, "Oh my God, why did I open up my mouth?" So I'm trying to be careful about the things that
it could come back and turn into something.
And there were a couple things that he said that I know for a fact would be
taken out of context.
But not even if it taken. It is what it is. It would probably be taken in an appropriate context. But I don't want to create these. I don't want to create these big stories. There was a Palestinian brother that was in there that really, he was tough on him.
I mean, can you blame him?
No, he walked out afterwards. I don't know if you read about that, but he told him off, and then he walked out afterwards. Yeah, that was all over the news.
So what I want to do is I want to thank you for advocating for us.
You're welcome.
I think people don't know that about you. People don't know like how much you care. It's obvious, like how much you care. It's obvious how dedicated you are to being in those spaces and advocating for people who don't even realize it. They don't even think it's important. So I want to thank you for advocating for us, and I think it's important, like Muslim said, just for people to see that. And I mean, that's why, I think it's important, like you talked about, having platforms that we can control. We kind of getting that out of this. Like, man, this is a platform that we control.
Absolutely.
And we can uplift the voices, So I just want to thank you, though, because I don't know. I didn't know.
Alhamdulillah.
So
even the importance of voting and we're voting sits with our people, even if it's not affecting me personally, it is affecting my people.
That's
So it's important for me to vote. Like you said, if it's 1,000 Muslims voting, then they're going to notice that.
And I want to say also, it's important to show up. And the people who say right now don't engage, with the president, I respect you, but I also ask for respect.
Right.
And
For what you're
everybody
doing.
has a job to do.
Right.
Yep.
So I also, really demand respect for the decisions that I make as well. I mean, a lot of people.
I've been in meetings with you. I know you demand respect.
She came in here with a cape.
Listen,
Of course
I've been in meetings with her.
Stop.
Like,
Put
it's
some
no
respect
joke.
on her name.
But it's hard work.
It's hard work,
And you're a
and-
mom, and you're
I
a
couldn't
wife.
imagine
and,
doing all of what you do and having to deal with. I mean, even the small things, just being a black woman, a black Muslim woman in that space. Also making sure that your voice is heard.
Listen,
Our voices are heard through you.
Absolutely. I appreciate you guys, and because it's not easy work. After that meeting, since the launch of BMLC, and definitely after the meeting with President Biden, I've been doxxed.
when you say docs,
just means like when they put your picture and your personal information on social media and say bad things about you so that everyone can attack you pretty much.
really?
People have said horrible things. Black Muslim Leadership Council is second to Israel and it's evil. People sent me messages and put on my Instagram, because I put up a statement and explained why I went to the meeting and what happened in the meeting. I'm just going to be very clear. It was non-Black Muslims who did all these things. Told me that this is not about your community. You don't speak for us. You need to follow the lead of the Palestinians. And so one day, not today, but one day we're going to have to discuss sort of the barriers within our own community for Black Muslims and sort of the anti-Black racism that has always been in existence in our community. Black people, we're really forgiving, because it's Black people, Black Muslims and Black people who are on the front lines of protesting and advocating for Palestine right now. And so I'm mentioning that because, you say it's hard. It was really hard to be told, when I have spent most of my time advocating for Palestine since October the 7th, and sort of being, attacked and being told that, it's not about your community and you don't speak for us, and some other, pretty mean things that I just tried to, delete and forget about. That was hard, from other Muslims or people who call themselves Muslims. Since October 7th, things have been tough. There's a lot of toxicity. Sometimes I call it toxic activism that I'm noticing. I think still you have to show up. You have to do the work, and you always just check your intentions. Make sure you're doing what you're doing for the right reasons. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to purify your intentions and to protect you, and keep it moving.
Yeah, I'm sorry you got to deal with that. I can imagine that you are dedicated to a cause. You're not intentionally trying to leave anybody out. You're including people that may or may not even include you based on what you're saying, but you're including them. So I can imagine that's tough. So if you could put like a feeling on that, what would that feeling be?
Disappointing. It was disappointing. A little scary, honestly, because of some of the things that were being said and the frequency of it all. Because I have a family, and when people are putting things up about you, and that can be a little bit scary. So I would say it was disappointing. I'm struggling with saying that it was hurtful,
right?
And I'm gonna tell you why. Because my daddy taught me about this already. My Abu used to tell me all the time about the racism that exists in the Muslim community. And honestly, I would butt heads with him at times, because I'm working with this, or I'm not going to name them, but I'm working with this organization. I'm like, we have to unify, that we're only going to be stronger as an ummah when we're all working together. We can benefit from each other. And, I'm like, trying to be this Muslim professional that's, working with all people. And he was like, no. So
we kind of talked about your father a little bit. So Imam Asim Abdur Rashid, he was a founder, like a stalwart founding father of Philly Muslims. Started in the 60s, 70s with the Dar Islam movement, a nationally connected organization, and he was just beloved at the forefront. You know, he's one of those old, tough as nails, old school kind of guys. Was on the national forefront, dedicated his whole life to being an imam, to like uplifting Muslims. I have so much love for Imam Asim. Like, you kind of grew up with a front row seat of all of this stuff, and one of the founding families, I'll say, the Abdul Rashid family, one of the founding families in Philly.
Alhamdulillah. You know, I remember back in the day, I was always, you know, trying to be up under my dad, and my Ummi too. But my Abu Imam Asim Abdul Rashid, Rahimullah, I used to go to protests with him, like travel across the country, and I always, you know, tried to learn from him, even when I wasn't always an obedient daughter. But it always meant a lot to me to make my Abby proud. And so I always talk about the fact that everything that I am, everything that I do is because of what I saw my parents do. Right. Growing up in Mujahideen, you know, Mujahideen helped me to build the foundation. Mujahideen is the foundation of, you know, who I am. We spent a lot of time at the masjid. We grew up around the Salams and the Abdul Aziz family, the Abdul Shahids and the Abdul Hais. I mean, these were our family. These were our family members. Everything that I learned growing up about being a Muslim, or even some of the sort of basic tenets and sort of basic fundamentals of Islam, those are the things that continue to inspire me to this day. And so at Mujahideen, we used to, you know, back in the day, there were drug dealers, you know, that was during the crack epidemic. So I remember, you know, we would have marches and the whole family would participate in the march. I remember the call and response, drug dealer, you can't hide. We charge you with genocide. You know, we would say all this stuff, no pushers, no drugs. You know, we would say all these things, and, you know, we would walk up and down the street. And I'm saying this because back then, those drug dealers knew they better not do drugs in front of the masjid. They were going to do it on the other side of 60th Street. They weren't going to do it anywhere near our masjid. They weren't going to try to holler at none of our sisters. They weren't going to do the things that you see done today. You know what I mean? There was a lot of respect for Muslims, and we knew we were different. We weren't just the average person. And something that is important to note, you know, our parents, they didn't have grants and money and, you know, resources. They my Abu, like you said, my Abu, he gave his life to community. There's
so many residuals from, you know, what he's done.
There's so many residuals from what he has done. Raya said, not just locally, but nationally. You know, when Imam Jamil Al-Amin, when he, you know, went away and became imprisoned, he kind of left my Abu in charge of the National Jamaat. So he's done a lot to influence, you know, really the development of normative Sunni Islam in America. I miss him so much. We always do this when we become adults. We say, "Oh, I should listen to my, to my mom or to my dad." But there are so many things that I see happening, you know, right today that, you know, he prepared me for. And I'll say that.
Much love to Sister Majida too.
Much love to Sister Majida. You know, I'm gonna talk about my Ummi too, because my Ummi, she runs the Nicetown community. Oh, we call her the mayor of Nicetown. She runs Nicetown.
You two have that, like, growing up, you know, as children of an imam, you know, growing up with that. So I'm sure it was a different kind of pressure on you, especially as you're making decisions in the political world, because I seen that shift, you know. So what was those conversations like where it was like, I'm voting, and it was like, I won't really get involved in some of that stuff? Or you feel like Imam was always supportive, or was it like these conversations you had to have?
With my Abu?
Yeah.
My Abu said one time, Salima want to be an imam.
Listen,
you ever ask, like, where you think I get it from?
Listen,
he was funny, but no, I think, you know, my Abu, he was old school. Like I said, I learned almost everything that I know from him, and so we were always on the same page. But there were certain times where he was kind of like, you know, maybe wanted me to move a certain way that I didn't necessarily, maybe we didn't agree on the same things or the same sort of mechanism of getting something done So there was things that I had to kind of learn and make my own, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And but we got through those things, alhamdulillah. And you know,
I get that sentiment because I've had conversations with my dad. You know, I'm pretty sure you know how it is trying to live up to that name. The new generation of how we get things done, it don't sit well with them because it's not their norm.
right.
So having that conversation, but also learning how to be respectful because you're still getting older and you don't want to disrespect your parents.
Right.
It's different.
No, you're right. And a couple of things you said that resonate with me. One is that people always paid attention to us, and we had there were certain expectations that the community had on us, because not only were we the imam's children, but we were from this huge family.
Right.
Me and my Abby had 20 kids. So one of the things that we're to answer your question, Riot, one of the things that not just where me and my Abby wouldn't see eye to eye, but some of the other brothers in leadership. I'm not big on getting permission to do things. Sometimes when you wait to get permission, I used to be like that, but I saw that nothing was getting done that way. You know what I mean? Because all these things, whether it's politics and whatever, all these things come into play, and then it just doesn't happen. Yeah, that's not who I am, because I'm like I know how to get this done. Let me, you know, I'll let y'all know what I'm doing. But I'm not going to get your permission to do it all the time. And maybe that's something that is not right that I'm, you know, but I feel like, you know, I've been able to get a lot of things done that way. And you know, so that doesn't always sit well with people, you know.
I mean, be honest, when you say people, like we talking about men in the community.
Yeah.
Right. I think sometimes we have to really be introspective about that, how we value women in our community. These qualities that you're talking about is not just for my daughter; they for anybody, right? So, I think that it's just this self-analyzing thing that, you know, men, Muslim, in the community, you know, have to kind of balance themselves against.
In fairness, I see why they were like that.
Me too.
Because
no, for real, understand.
because some of the people from the younger generation, I notice things in them where I say, I see why our elders didn't want to give you leadership. You want to be out here, you know, doing things that our daddies didn't do. You know, my daddy had 20 kids because he had 3 wives. You understand what I'm saying? Now, that might not be, you know, what everybody wants for themselves, but
he moved with a level of integrity.
It was a level. You understand where I'm going there with that? It was a level of integrity. He was going to do what was Islamically correct.
Right.
And sometimes you see people are not necessarily doing that, and I think that that's also why our young people don't respect us the way that they should, because they see a lot of hypocrisy.
You were very vocal about what happened at Philadelphia Masjid.
Oh yeah,
because of what happened last year. A lot of people don't remember that, and I remember you being vocal. Yeah, absolutely.
Vocal last year.
Absolutely, I remember you being very vocal about it last year. Like, talk about like just like some of that.
It was becoming a story in the political sort of space, and you know that, you know, Muslims are involved with gun violence. So I was getting phone calls from elected officials, especially around the time that there was like a local rapper that got murdered. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but it was like right before Ramadan.
Right.
And he was Muslim. People from media were called me, like media people. I think the Tribune called me, asked me, how do I feel about this Muslim involvement in gun violence? And I'm like, oh no, you know what I mean? That's the last thing that we need is for them to be branding this, you know, a Muslim issue. And so I called some people. I was working with Ryan Boyer, and you know, we said let's BMLC, Black Muslim Leadership Council, and another organization, Philadelphia Community of Stakeholders. We decided to organize like some of the imams, and there are Muslim leaders that have organizations that are focusing on gun violence prevention already. And so we had a meeting with about 30, 40 people, about 40 leaders from across the city. This was during Ramadan. And we called ourselves the Philadelphia Muslim Gun Violence Prevention Task Force. And so we got together, we talked about the issues, and it was some really important people. Imam Hassan Somali was there, Imam Shadid Muhammad,
Right.
Dr. Kaiser, Imam Idris. It was really nice to see everyone unify and, come
Right.
together. What we decided was that we were going to put together a statement to send to the masajid and ask them to start focusing on this gun violence piece, and that we would also ask the imams to speak about gun violence, for the khatibs to speak about gun violence during Eid al-Fitr prayers.
Right.
We even had a press conference scheduled for the Friday after Eid. Before the shooting happened, we were already planning on doing a press conference to just highlight the fact that as Muslims, we condemn this violence and that we're working together, to eradicate this violence. And so then the shooting happened.
Right.
I had a call, mass shooting at Philadelphia Masjid. I'm like, what? Me and my family, we were going to go. It just so happens that my husband was, because you said it happened last year, and my husband, who is Senegalese, he had just gotten here like last February, a couple of months before Eid. And we were down there last year, and there was a stampede. It was when it happened. It was like a stampede, and it was scary. Somebody said they heard a gun. They said it was firecrackers. I don't know what happened, but it was craziness last year. I was really upset about it.
Remember,
my husband had to literally pick up my baby stroller and run. He was so this year
I had to turn around just in case a bullet was flying.
Yeah.
I had my daughter.
It was scary. Last year it was scary,
Mm-hmm.
and so my husband was kind of like, I'm not really trying to go down there. Is that the place where the situation happened? And he was tired, so we didn't go. And literally, we would have been there when it happened, because it was like 45 minutes before then. My nieces and nephews were down there.
Right.
I was getting calls. It was scary, and I was upset. I was trying to get information, because people were, again, elected officials were calling me. People were in the community were calling me. Everyone's trying to figure out, because at first they kept, when stuff like that happens, it's all these rumors. They were like, somebody died. Like that's what they were saying. And I was like, oh Allah, this is not happening. Like there's no way this is happening. You know what I mean? Did I feel like that there should have been, better precautions taken based upon what happened the previous year? Yes. I felt like that after the first year, they swept it under.
Yeah, you were very. I remember seeing you were very outspoken.
Yeah.
And I remember you actually had a post like, "See, y'all thought I was crazy."
Yeah. Yeah, because everybody was acting like I was overreacting, but that's not. You don't play with people's lives.
With safety.
It was downplayed last year, and I stand on one of my feelings about that.
Especially, you think you want to have your guard down.
I was upset, about it, and honestly a little bit about the way, sort of the handling of it immediately afterwards. I felt like our first duty was to the community. When I heard the stories about what happened, I felt like, these kids, these people that were out there, I heard sisters' Keymars were coming off, and people were, trampled and running into stores, babies crying.
People that went afterwards said it was just shoes laying everywhere.
Yeah, it was mayhem. And, kids were getting separated from their parents for hours at a time. And I'm like, tell the story. I wrote an op-ed, after a couple of weeks afterwards, because it took me a couple of weeks to process it all emotionally.
Right.
I was angry at first, and and one of my friends had to remind me. She was like, "This is why you started BMLC."
Right.
You know what I mean?
To be a voice.
This is why you're doing what you're doing. You know what I mean? One thing I will say also is that I maintain my feelings on, this is not a Muslim problem.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's an issue that, is happening in urban communities across the country, where you have poverty, families that are broken, single parent families, and the disparities in the educational system, and mental health issues and substance abuse issues. When you have all of these things, regardless of where you are, you're going
color
to
your
have
skin
crime.
is or any of that.
Your skin
Right.
is, exactly. You're going to have crime.
Mm-hmm. When you only have your ego to hold on to,
that's right.
Your pride to hold on to, you gonna kill for that.
That's right. And it just so happens that Philadelphia is a city where there are a lot of Muslims. So the people who are living in these communities that are engaged in these things, they are Muslim. Mm-hmm. They call themselves, they identify as Muslim.
We say it all the time on here, like Philly, like little Mecca.
Yeah.
And Philly, in America, this is the nexus of Muslims.
That what you're saying is so powerful. And if we really organize ourselves and we're working towards the greater good, you know how powerful that will be.
And I think we can come together and actually do that.
That's right. And the media and the law enforcement they don't make it about the religious affiliation when other people do it. But when Muslims do things, they say, oh, it was Muslims. I even saw articles on Eid Day where they were like, this shooting happened at an Eid al-Fitr celebration. Eid al-Fitr is the festival that happens after Ramadan. And they were like explaining all this stuff about these Islamic perspectives. And I'm like, why are they talking about this?
Ain't got nothing to do with.
Yeah.
So we like to end. We're gonna wrap up. It's been a great conversation.
We have to have you on again.
We gotta get you back. You know what I mean? You about to be our political pundit. Right. You know what I mean? Like, I sincerely appreciate your advocacy.
Absolutely.
You know, because you doing this without people knowing whether they care about voting or not. You still advocating for them. It's extremely necessary just to see all of the hard work, you know, see the adversity that you fight through, and, you know, still raising your kids, still being a wife, still being like all of these things. So I appreciate you. I value you. And I'm grateful that we have, you know, people, you know, raised with the same tenacity that Imam has, you know, kind of doing the work.
What he said. Yeah, what he said.
All right, so look. All right, so we got some questions we're going to end with. What's the worst job you ever had?
I used to be a paralegal. I think I said that. And I worked at this law firm, and they asked me to remove my hijab before I went into a courtroom. And it's literally how I started doing all this activism. Wow. That is literally my story.
So thank you to them.
Yeah, so thank you to them. Yeah, so I was like working on this thing, and they told me, could I remove my hijab before going to court?
Wow. Okay. Pizza or cheesesteak?
Cheesesteak, but it has to be a good one.
Chicken or like beef?
Chicken. But it depends on how it's cooked.
Where you getting it from?
Fried chicken, or is it baked chicken? No,
I'm talking about like a chicken cheesesteak or like...
cheesesteak. Oh, beef for sure.
Okay,
beef.
okay. Where you getting it from?
Y'all gonna get me in trouble. Cottons.
Listen,
she in trouble. She in trouble
because her brother owned a cheesesteak spot. So she in trouble.
Hossein probably gonna come and be like,
I'm sending him this clip.
We got Joe Salima. We got Joe Salima.
He caters full time now. He closed Southside of BS. So now, only now do I go to Kyan's.
Water ice or Mr. Softy?
Water ice for sure.
Water ice?
Water ice?
Yeah.
Last but not least,
go ahead.
Where's the best place you traveled?
Hajj.
Alhamdulillah.
Mecca.
So cliche. No.
All right. We got to get somewhere because that is the best trip. That's the best trip.
Mecca, Medina, all the places.
You're right.
I'm not even gonna make you give a different answer.
But can I give a second answer?
All right, give a second answer.
West Africa, Senegal, where I met my husband.
Okay.
That's biased. Yeah. Hey man, listen, Third Party Podcast, culture, faith, excellence. Thanks a lot to the amazing Salima Suswell for joining us. No, appreciate you. All right, Third Party Podcast.
Deuces.